What you're seeing on screen right now is the 13th Melee tier list, which was released in 2021 based off of a survey that Ryobeat and other people sent out to people who are ranked top 100 in 2019. So basically everyone who was top 100 plus a bunch of other relevant community figures could vote on what their Melee tier list looks like, and then this is our result. It's the list that most of us know pretty well today. For those who are listening, you know, the order is Fox in number 1, then Marth, then Jigglypuff in number 3, then Falco. Those four are in S tier. A tier has Sheik, Captain Falcon, and Peach in that order. Next up is the B+ tier, which has Ice Climbers, Pikachu, Yoshi, and Samus. B- tier is just Luigi and Dr. Mario. C+ tier is Ganondorf and Mario. C- tier is Donkey Kong, Young Link, Game & Watch. D tier, Mewtwo, Roy, Pichu, Ness, Zelda, and then we've got Kirby and Bowser in the F tier. So this is the tier list that most of us have come to know today, and I want to tell you why I think tier lists suck for Melee nowadays. A lot of tier lists that are made are very similar, right? Overall agreement is very high in the positions of, or in the placements of most characters on the tier list, and that makes me ask the question of, what are we even doing this for? What's the purpose of a tier list? What is it supposed to do for us? So Wikipedia says that a tier list is a concept originating in video game culture where playable characters are subjectively ranked by their respective viability as part of a list. Then our next source is Smash Wiki, which is even better for this purpose, which says that tier lists rank based on strengths and weaknesses assuming equal skill. So it also talks about ranking a character's potential in a competitive setting. So it doesn't just mean like what can the character do in theory, but it means in a competitive setting where humans are playing the game. This is of course important because looking at a vacuum where people have 0 frames reaction time and people play like robots, that's a different thing. But we're talking about humanly viable play, and I think that's what a tier list is supposed to be about. What is humanly viable? What can each character do? And especially, how do characters interact with each other? Viable, to those who've watched the aMSas video on how many viable characters there are in Melee, viable means feasible or capable of functioning properly. So this is what we're looking for here. Now let's talk about how a tier list relates to Melee's metagame, because for a lot of people these two things are often seen as the same thing. But I think it's very important that we differentiate between the metagame and a tier list. A metagame is often defined as a game beyond the game, and it refers to the strategies and approaches that people use to play a game. In competitive games, a metagame can refer to the most popular strategy, or it can also refer to just preparation for a game. So just to summarize, viability is about a character's raw strengths and weaknesses. The metagame is about the most popular strategies, either at a certain skill level or even within a region. Let's say, for example, I'm Nikki, I play Ice Climbers, but people in my region in Germany figure out that I just cannot win against Ness. Like, Ness is just my absolute nemesis. You know, he might be D tier number 23 on this tier list for 2021, but I just can't beat that guy. But no one's ever played him against me, so no one would know. Let's say people locally find that out and they all start picking Ness just against me and they start beating me. That would be a metagame development, right? Me and the people in Germany, there's like a game evolving outside of the game where people are doing certain things outside of the game just to beat me. And that is what I think a metagame is and how it's defined. We can have metagames by looking at top level Melee, right? So there could be metagame developments in top level Melee, such as people picking up secondaries just to beat Hungrybox. But I think the metagame shouldn't really have an effect on what our tier lists look like. If everyone picks Ness against me and I lose to them, despite the matchup being winning for my character, and it's just a personal thing between me and seeing Ness on the screen that makes it impossible for me to win, I think that is a metagame development that changes the game's meta, but it doesn't change the tier list in my opinion. Alright, to give a few examples, let's look at a potential world where there's two kinds of Fox players. There's only Fox players who can do up throw up air, and there's Fox players who can wave shine up smash. But there's no Fox player who can do both of these things. in terms of the metagame, Fox might be worse in the metagame if there's no one who can do both of these things. But we should realize that if there's a Fox player who can do one of the things, and there's another Fox player who can do the other thing, and these two things aren't like mutually exclusive because of some controller shenanigans, on the tier list we should treat it as if Fox is able to do both of these things, which of course we know he is, but for other characters this becomes more difficult. So if you look at like 2 years ago or a year ago, we had like Slug with the best ever neutral game from an Ice Climbers player that we've seen, but he was doing a lot of punishes in a way where it seemed like many Ices who weren't even top 100 would be able to do slightly better than him. So if we rank Ice Climbers on a tier list, we shouldn't just look at what Slug is able to do back then, but we should look at what is the best Ice Climbers player able to do, and what can other Ice Climbers players do that the best player isn't doing yet, but could realistically, or maybe even very easily, start doing themselves. Next example. This is actually a very relevant theory that I've come up with, and I think it might actually be true. Let's say that aMSas isn't just one person. Let's say aMSas, the Yoshi player, is actually a pair of like 10 siblings in total. So aMSas has like 9 identical twins. I don't even know what you call it when there's 10 of them, but that's what he has. They're all have the same name, they look the exact same, and they also make the exact same choices in-game when playing Melee. So we just have aMSas, but there's 9 more of them. If all these aMSas start entering tournaments at the same time, because right now they're just entering one at a time because they don't want to show us that there's actually 10 of them, so right now only one of them is attending each major, but they could just all start going to tournaments at the same time. And now suddenly we always have like at least 2 Yoshis in every top 8, maybe even 6 at some points. But in-game, they're all doing the exact same things. Should this change Yoshi's position on the tier list? I personally don't think it should. It should only change Yoshi's position on the tier list if they're doing different stuff in-game and if they're showing us ways to play matchups or to play situations that we didn't know about before. But since we're assuming that all the aMSas play exactly the same way, having not just one aMSas but 10 of them shouldn't change Yoshi's position on the tier list. It would change the top level metagame by a lot, because people would just have to prepare for Yoshi way more, they would practice the matchup more, they might even pick up secondaries in some cases. But on the tier list, this should not affect Yoshi's placement. Another good example is, the Junebug situation we have going on here. If you're making a tier list nowadays, and you put Donkey Kong a lot higher than you did 4 years ago, you better justify that with in-game examples. Because if you just say, oh yeah, Donkey Kong's really good because Junebug and Akir and Bing and Kwang are all doing really well, okay, you could say that, but we're not just talking about who's doing well. If I want to know who's doing well, I can just look at usage statistics of how many players of a character are in top 100, are in top 64 of majors. That will tell me who's doing well. But a tier list is supposed to be about how good is the character compared to the cast. What strengths do they have? What weaknesses do they have? Where do they do well? Where do they do poorly? So if a character moves a lot on your tier list, you should be able to justify that with specific in-game examples. Like, let's say you just thought Donkey Kong could never power shield Falco lasers, just because you didn't know about that. But then you see that, oh, if he turns his back, maybe it just does dash away power shield, it's a lot more consistent and easier for them. So now it's easier to play the matchup when you thought it was impossible. That would be an example that you could use to justify putting the character higher, but it will also be something that you have to accept that in your first tier list, where you put Donkey Kong lower, you missed something important. And I think that's what tier lists should really get you to do. They should make you think about how a character works. What strengths do they have? What weaknesses do they have? What solutions are there to the weaknesses? And maybe there are players there already who can use these new tools to solve a lot of the problems, but maybe it's not the best player of that character, right? Maybe there's an Ice Climbers player who is a lot better at some of the matchups that Morph and myself are struggling in. But because they aren't doing it on the big stage most of the time, people think it's impossible. But if you're making a tier list, you should look at how are the actual matchups for most characters, what are the problems, what are the advantages, and where are improvements that could be made, or that maybe have already been made, but just haven't been implemented yet by, some of the top representatives, which are the people you most see on the big stage. So, I also started talking about this because I, at some point, had an interaction on Twitter with LS, who is a League of Legends coach, who's very famous for his opinions on the game. being often contrary to what is actually happening in popular or in pro play. Because in League of Legends, it seems like people will look towards what other people are doing and then think, oh, if other good players are doing it, this must be good, so I'll do it myself. And a lot of innovation will be left on the table because people will follow what others are doing without specifically talking about why what is being done is maybe good or bad, and if it's bad in some situations, what a good counter could look like. And this is really what I want tier lists to accomplish. I want there to be specific arguments about, like, you know, how bad is Luigi versus Marth? One person saying, oh, it's impossible because Marth just down tilts and plays a million times and Luigi can't get in. But then the Luigi person who might know a bit more about the situation, or who might know less and just needs to be informed, will talk about, oh no, Luigi can just like time a wave dash around the down tilt and then go for down smash, and the risk reward is so good for Luigi in that spot because if you get down tilted, you just get pushed away a little bit. It's not that bad. And if you hit the down smash, it's like 0 to death combo almost every time. I'm not saying that that's the case, but these are the kinds of situations that I want people to discuss when a tier list comes out. I want people to justify what's the biggest issue for a character, and not just like, oh, this matchup is bad, but why is that matchup bad? Why are Ice Climbers held back by Peach, in some people's opinion? They say, oh yeah, Ice Climbers aren't, you know, S tier or something because they're bad against Peach. Okay, can you tell me why they're bad against Peach? And if you know why they are bad against Peach, which would already be insane if someone was able to answer that, in a way that wouldn't make me completely go insane, what's the counterplay that Ice Climbers have? And is it feasible to implement, or is it impossible to implement and it's just task stuff that no one will ever do? That is, I think, where we actually make progress with our tier lists. So let's talk about why there are so many tier lists coming out, right? Also, as we talk about this, let's just watch some Ice Climbers Donkey Kong gameplay, because we just talked about these two characters and I want something to be happening on the screen. Why are there so many tier lists coming out? First of all, of course, it's very easy content to make for people, right? You just put characters on a list, you give a broad idea on oh yeah, I saw this character do well recently, I think they must be better than I thought, so let's move them a little bit higher. That's fine, right? You can do that. I'm not here to, stop you from doing it, because people really enjoy watching those, right? Everyone has their own opinions on which characters are fun, which characters they like or dislike, and how good they are. It's kind of like being on a playground and talking, about if Goku or Superman would win in a fight. It's just, you're probably not gonna reach a conclusion, but it's fun to argue about. Alright, I'm back. Just had to drink some water because I fell into the worst coughing fit I've had ever in my life. But it's okay, we're back. So, yeah, like I said, it's like talking about would Goku or Superman win in a fight. You just can kind of argue about it for the sake of it because it's fun. And yeah, that's good. Because this kind of content is also very informative for people who aren't as invested in the scene, who just want to get a broad overlook on what character is roughly good, how, if I start playing the game myself, who are the good characters I could pick up, who's maybe not worth picking up, that kind of stuff. But that's also why I think that being smart about how you make your tier list and being accurate and putting in actual work to figure out the details of not just what is good and bad, but why something is good and bad and how it might change in the future, that is where the real value of a tier list comes in. Because we don't want people to get discouraged, in the last couple of years, maybe people just would be like, oh yeah, I want to play Donkey Kong, but he's just, he's 16th on the tier list, I think he's just too bad, I can't do it. We don't want that to happen. Of course, overall, one of the opinions I have is that I believe most characters are underrated in Melee. Even the ones that are I don't know, lower third of the tier list are often seen as just not viable. And yes, they're worse than other characters, but I still think that depending on what your goals are, and usually, realistically, almost no one is playing to win majors, except for a very small amount of people. Even if you go down to the lower third of the tier list, there's still a lot of stuff to be found there for people who are trying to find a new character to play that maybe suits them better than one of the top tiers that they forced themselves into playing. Maybe I'm also just talking, from my own experience, because I forced myself to play Fox because everyone told me he's the best character by far, and if you want to win, you have to play Fox. But sometimes playing the on paper better character isn't what works best for you. because all the characters play so differently that finding one that just works well for you is more important than picking the one that is slightly better, but that just doesn't suit you quite as well. Alright, so yeah, just to summarize, I think tier lists are very good. They're fine if you just make them for content, but they're way better if you put an actual like effort and research into it. If you maybe think about like, alright, what do I think? I don't know how good this character is. Let me just try to think about what their matchup chart could look like, right? Let me just write down for each matchup, do I think they win by a lot, win by a little bit, go even, lose by a bit, lose by a lot? If I have no idea, maybe I can just hop into like the Luigi Discord and ask around there. Maybe there's like a recent community matchup chart from the Luigi Discord that I can look at, right? That's the kind of stuff that I think makes a tier list way better, because it shows that you're actually engaging with the content of what a tier list is supposed to be about, which is strength of a character. And not just how many of them do we see at a top level, how many of them have I seen at the last 3 majors I watched. If I saw none, the character sucks. If I saw quite a few, the character goes up 2 spots in the tier list, there we go, right? Without being able to say what's changed about them and about their strengths and weaknesses. So, one more thing I want to talk about is the PAL Melee tier list, the last one that was released in 2015. For those who don't know, PAL Melee is the most recent version of Super Smash Bros. Melee, which was released in 2002 in Europe and Australia, probably also in New Zealand, but I think those were the main regions. That's the version of the game where Fox up smash is a good bit weaker, Fox's up B doesn't go quite as far, Marth is a little bit lighter, and his down air is no longer a meteor, it's no longer a spike, instead it's a meteor smash that can be meteor cancelled. Falco's weak down air is no longer a spike, it sends you to the side. Sheik's down throw, you can't chain grab with it anymore, which I'm sure a lot of people listening to this will be like, oh hell yeah, that's what we should play. So it's a version of the game where a lot of characters are changed. For example, Yoshi is also a good bit stronger. His up smash and forward smash, I believe, are both stronger. He's a little bit heavier. His down air does less damage, but you know, it's rare to be hitting all hits of down air anyway, so overall Yoshi is a good bit stronger in PAL, right? There's more changes to the game, of course, but those are usually the most noticeable ones when you just go and play it. So this PAL Melee tier list was released in 2015, and similarly to the 2021 community Melee tier list that I talked about in the beginning, it was created by asking different players about their opinions, right? So we had people like Armada giving their vote, we had people like Ice giving their vote, so just a bunch of European Melee community figures and top players. This is what the list looks like. For those who are listening, it's not too surprising. We've got Fox number 1 in the double S tier as the only character in that tier, Marth number 2, Falco number 3, number 4 is Jigglypuff, number 5 is Sheik, number 6 Peach, 7 Captain Falcon, 8 Ice Climbers, and so forth. Just because we just talked about Donkey Kong's number 17 on this list, and his highest ranking was 14th, and his lowest ranking was 19th by the people who made this list. Just as an example, Fox was always placed between 1st and 3rd, Marth was placed between 1st and 5th, Falco was always 2, 3, or 4. It's a very fun like little piece of history to look at as like the most final version of the final tier list of a version of the game that hasn't been played in, I don't know, like 5 years now. I think Europe switched to NTSC in 2019, so yeah, and I don't think any regions were still playing PAL by that point. I think Finland might have played PAL for a bit longer, maybe, but I'm not sure. I think by 2020, by the time COVID began, I think even the last bastions of PAL Melee in Europe had realized, like, okay, we want to play Slippy. Can't play PAL on Slippy, let's just play NTSC. So, thanks Fizzy, I guess. Imagine just me being able to play PAL Melee and, you know, no, let's say wobbling isn't banned, Fox up smash is weaker, Sheik down throw doesn't do anything. It would be beautiful. But it would only be beautiful for like 1 or 2 tournaments, because I would just find it really funny to hit Fox off stage, because Fox is also a little bit lighter in PAL, so I just hit them off stage like 5% earlier, and they go exactly as far as they did previously, but now their up B is shorter, so they can't make it back. It'd just be funny. I don't even think, like, in terms of balance, which is like the better version to play, I think that's its whole own video that we can do. But it's a cool version of the game, and I think there's a lot of positives to Pal Melee that people don't know about. For example, I think Marth Downer being a meteor instead of a spike is really cool for like platform combos, because you can tech chase with it way better. Because right now on Marth Downer as a tech chase, you can just slide, like aMSas tech it very easily. But in Pal, it sends straight up, so it's way harder to like get out of Downer combos from Marth on stage. Off stage, doesn't kill you, but you know, my Pal Marth goes insane. That's all I've been trying to say for the past 2 minutes. Alright, so the reason why I pulled this up is because I want to show you what aMSas list looked like. You can't see exactly like how people rated characters, because people just gave in like a numbered list where it was like number 1 Fox, number 2 Marth, number 3 Falco, whatever, and so forth. I want to show you what aMSas list looks like. This is it right here. Don't really worry about the tiers, because I just put 6 characters in each tier. For those who are listening again, aMSas list, first of all, it has Zelda as the worst character in the game. So number 25 is Bowser, number 26 is Zelda, so let's go Zelda. Kirby is also number 22 on aMSas list. Kirby did receive a good bit of buffs in Pal Melee, so that makes sense. But most importantly, his top 3 are number 1 Fox, number 2 Marth, and number 3 Yoshi. You might be thinking, like, Yoshi, what are you doing up there? Like, get down before you hurt yourself. The spaces are coming to shine you, the ice climbers are coming to grab whatever. But I believe this is a really cool list, just because from talking to Ice, I know that every one of these opinions, he would be able to justify them like to hell and back with in-game examples, with specific situations of like, oh, Yoshi is really good because what he struggles with can be dealt with by doing X and Y, which no one is doing yet. Because you have to think about that this was in 2015. aMSas was nowhere close to winning any majors back then. Ice just looked at the character, thought about what he can do, what he can't do, and was able to give really good explanations for why it might go one way or the other. And then you could argue with him about like the extent to which Yoshi can or can't do these things. But I think, of course, I'm not saying that you have to be a contrarian on your tier list just for the sake of it, but I want you to really think about what can a character really do, and how are some characters held back, not by their weaknesses, but just how are they held back by a lack of the right person being there to put all the tools together into one place. It's also something that it's one of the reasons why I think ice climbers are still underrated. Not because like, oh yeah, haha, they're just broken, but it's because they're an extremely technical character that like you can always do any 2 moves at the same time, and you can have one character do one move and the other one just stand there. That opens up so many opportunities, and none of your individual moves are super overpowered, but just the possibility of being able to pick your moves in such a way gives the character a really high skill ceiling that I don't think anyone is really close to reaching yet. And it's not like, oh, you have to be frame perfect 5 times in a row to do any of these things. It's just you have to be able to distinguish which one of these possible options are worth doing in the first place. Right? You always have to make that judgment of how difficult is this and how good is the reward if I'm able to do this. And because there is like a million things you could do, you need someone who's able to pick out like the right 80 moves or the right 80 things that you actually can spend your time investing in to make it worthwhile. Anyways, also, if you look at Ice's list, you'll see that Donkey Kong is in 14th place, which is the highest placement Donkey Kong had on any of the submitted PAL tier lists. So Ice was really onto something. He didn't quite have Donkey Kong as high as like number 10 or something, where I think people like Hungrybox have put him recently. But you know, I feel like he had a good eye and he had a good mind, you know, to think about melee stuff. Alright, so the main takeaways from this discussion, in my opinion, should be that if you create tier lists, and let's say you do one like every 6 months or something like that, and if a character makes a big jump on your tier list, without that character showing you anything of significance that is considered new, it means your previous tier list clearly missed something important, and you should maybe reconsider how you approach tier lists. And maybe, of course, I'm not saying don't get drunk and like just create a tier list and voice chat with your friends at 2 a.m. Please continue doing that, those are hilarious. Also, please continue making tier lists of like who has the best fit and like who has the nicest shoes or stuff like that, because those are actually the best tier lists. But it is important that if you're someone who takes this game seriously and who makes tier lists to show to people and to show to a broad audience who might not know as much about the game, I think it is good if you're able to put in some time and effort that goes beyond just, raw vibes, instead trying to pinpoint specific reasons for why changes are occurring and why a character is why they are. Yeah, like I said, you are a free human being. If you want to create a zero effort tier list, I'm not going to stop you. I might get very slightly mad seeing your list, but that's on me, and I think I deserve that sometimes. But I want your tier list to have you get into a discussion about like if Luigi could theoretically win a major, or if he just can't do it. Those are the kind of discussions I want you to be having, and I want your tier lists to lead into. Alright, let me know what you think. I personally, of course, what we're looking at right now is still aMSas PAL Melee tier list. This is what Hungrybox cooked up like 2 months ago, which is also very respectable. I think, where's Fox? I think he had Fox right there. Yeah, Fox #1, big shocker. This is Hungrybox tier list. Also, solid list, definitely. But I think when it comes to tier lists, there's more that we can do. And I'll be trying to make a tier list of my own, but I'll start by creating just a matchup chart for all of Melee, by consulting different character mains, by using all the information I've gathered, and then hopefully I can create a tier list where I can justify every single placement and tell you stuff about every character of why they are where they are. Not everyone should or can do that, but I think it's what I want to do when I'm trying to make my tier list here. Alright, thanks for watching, like and subscribe the video, and I hope I'll see you all in chat at Tipped Off this weekend.